समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
Today we are on the Ashley Tellis story. Ashley Tellis, as we know, is one of the most prominent strategic scholars of our times, of the past at least 3 decades, particularly related to the region, to the South Asian region, what the Americans call South Asia or American think tanks call South Asia, but which I prefer to call the Indian subcontinent. So he was an Indian subcontinent specialist, currently at Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, CEIP, in Washington. Lately, he had also written 2 articles, one of them quite long, like a lead article, which were very critical of India. In fact, the first one was headline, America's Bad Bet on India. Although later he said that he objected to the headline, it wasn't an apt headline, he did not give the headline, etc. etc. लेकिन अक्लमंद को इशारा काफ़ी होता है, and in this case, it was much more than ishara, you just had to read the piece. Both of these pieces, and he followed up with another piece deeply critical of India, building on the same points that India has to choose its side. And in this case, he wanted India to choose the side of the Americans, not be obsessed, as he said, with multi-alignment and with the multipolar world, etc., etc. Now, he's been in news. His new article had come out just the other day, just a week or so back, and now suddenly headlines emerged. This was late last night. Headlines emerged from Washington that FBI had filed charges against him. These are not charges of espionage, by the way, but these are charges of taking out top secret information and documentation unauthorizedly from Department of Defense, Department of State, etc., etc. These are classified documents, top secret. Now, the charges the FBI Special Agent Jeffrey Scott filed with the court said that he had been doing this for quite some time. And you can see in this 10-page document that the FBI Special Agent Jeffrey Scott has filed, you can see that Ashley Tellis has been under watch at least since 2022. So first of all, we cannot say that this only happened because Donald Trump came in and he decided to go after certain people or some think tanks, etc., etc. Ashley Tellis has been under some kind of tracking since 2022, because that's how far back this document goes, this 10-page document goes. And during this period, there are multiple visits that he is alleged to have made to facilities, Department of Defense, Department of State, which keep top secret information. And there, in multiple ways, in different ways, he is accused of having printed it, which he was not supposedly, allegedly not authorized to do. He's supposed to have also taken it out. He's supposed to have walked into these facilities with briefcases and taken these out, also put them in what the Americans call red welt folders. See what one looks like. These are very common in America. If you go to any American office, government office, private office, lawyer's office, think tank, you will find these. These are quite convenient also. These have compartments. You can put your documents there. And sometimes these even come alphabetically marked. So A, B, C, D, E, like that. So he also kept these in red welt folders. In some cases, he's alleged to have taken his notepads, and again allegedly, because remember, even the statement that the FBI has issued has a last line, the statutory or customary last line that says these are only charges. We follow the principle of innocent until proven guilty. So we should also use that disclaimer. However, the charges are that there is a pattern to his doing it, that he was printing these documents, and I will give you some details as we go along. And then at various points of time, he had meetings with Chinese officials, PRC officials as those are called, in restaurants, where in some cases the FBI says he had walked in with a manila envelope. Manila again is a very American thing. It's like a big envelope in which you can carry a lot of documents. The Chinese had come in carrying what looked like red gift bags. Those Chinese usually carry when they have meetings. They give to people. Very often these might have couple of boxes of Chinese tea and some. In the old days it used to be writings of Mao. These days it can be speeches of Xi Jinping. But the insinuation in this case is that maybe it was something else, because he gave them his manila envelope and he gave them, that's the allegation. And the Chinese gave him this red bag which he was carrying back home. Beyond that, the statement is very clear. Very clear. It does not make the allegation of espionage, because obviously they don't have any information. Then they also say that it looked to us. Why did we move now? Because it looked to us like the next day, 11th of October this month, he was to go to Italy. And then he was booked to come back on the 27th. But they suspected, FBI says, they suspected that he was trying to go overseas and carry his quote-unquote stash of secret documents with him. In raids on his house, the FBI got court warrants for raids on his house, on his car, search of his car and of his person. In those, they claim they've recovered more than 1,000 pages printed out of classified documents. Many of these pertain to air power, many of these pertain to capability of fighter aircraft. If you read this document, I don't get full clarity on whether these were capabilities of Chinese fighter aircraft or American fighter aircraft, but also tactics, PowerPoint presentations of American tactics in aerial warfare. Once again, the insinuation is that this stuff was of value to the Chinese. However, there is no charge that these documents were given to the Chinese. Once again, I will repeat the fact that the charge is unauthorized copying, unauthorized access to this secret information, and unauthorized possession of these documents. That you would remember also the kind of charges that Donald Trump faced when Mar-a-Lago was raided. Those are also the kind of charges that Hillary Clinton faced when she was raided. So I'm not saying there is a parallel or there is a comparison, but I'm only giving you examples. That said, we will go into more details and a better understanding of this, for which I will have the master, Praveen Swami, join us in just a little bit. Before that, I will just give you a quick chronological account of what has happened, and I will go backwards, just as the FBI equivalent of what we might call an FIR has done. They have also gone backwards. So first of all, what's the latest? October 13, they filed a criminal complaint. Over that weekend, they've arrested Ashley Tellis. October 11, they executed a search warrant at Tellis's home. They went to his basement. They found stuff there. There was also a semi-finished basement. They found stuff there also. Tellis obviously cooperated with them. He gave them the keys. He also let them use his fingerprints to unlock his laptop, from where also FBI downloaded stuff, and they also picked up what they call bags filled with these documents. October 10, 2025 is when the so-called second Mark Center incident took place. Now, what is Mark Center? See the picture. Mark Center is a Department of Defense facility in Alexandria, Virginia, on Mark Drive. The address would be 22311 Mark Drive. Next time you are driving somewhere there, look out for a Hilton that is next to Mark Center. So Mark Center is where he was allegedly going and making copies of these documents. So September 25 was his latest visit to the Mark Center to take out these documents. At the Department of Defense's Mark Center, within the Office of National Assessment, ONA, that is Office of National Assessment, there is a facility called SCIF. SCIF stands for Sensitive Compartmented Info Facility. Now, these facilities, see what these look like. You can see these pictures. That's the beauty of the American system. A lot of the information, a lot of the stuff is available even visually. Now, these have been designed in such a way that these are protected not just from electronic eavesdropping, but also from acoustic eavesdropping. कोई आवाज सुन के बाहर से, because electronically you can pick those things. You know, one of my favorite books on spycraft, Spy Catcher, written by Peter Wright, that has one sequence where the MI6 is trying to figure out how do we eavesdrop on the Soviet ambassador. So they are calling on the Soviet ambassador and they think if we can gift him something that he will keep on his desk, from which we can have his voice and the voice of other people talking with him reflect, so we can pick those up from a sensor in a building which has a window overlooking the Soviet ambassador's office. This is in that era, several decades ago. So now these technologies are much better in that case. Because I told you this story, I will complete the story also. They checked out various gifts. So first they thought they will give him a nicely made replica of the Kremlin in silver. And then they figured that the Kremlin made in silver has too many jagged edges, so the voice will not travel that well. Then they thought they will give him a granite bust of Lenin, and then they figured Lenin's head was completely bald, so sound waves will slip off it. And I don't remember how they resolved it, but acoustic spying is also a thing. So these structures, which look very much like cargo containers, what you do is, if you're authorized, as Ashley Tellis was, since 2001, he had signed off on an agreement with the government on a high-level security. So he had the highest level, very high-level security clearance. So he had access to these compartments where he could go and work by himself. But remember, all this access, going there, getting in, logging onto something, all of this would be recorded not just electronically, but also by cameras, because he would also know that all these facilities are fully covered with cameras and also other electronic eavesdropping. The allegation, however, is that in spite of this, in full view of the cameras, he was carrying out all of this. So how many such visits has he allegedly made? The second Mark Center incident I told you was October 10. Then I will not tell you the details. I will just tell you the dates. Second State Department incident was September 25, 2025. These have happened in quick succession. The Mark Center was in the morning at 10 o'clock. At 10:30 he enters the facility. This one at State Department is in the evening from 8:11 to 9:17 p.m. Which brings us to the first Mark Center incident. The first Mark Center incident is 12 September 2025. That's just over a month back, where once again Tellis is seen on video surveillance. This is where he is accused of using a co-worker's assistance in printing some top secret materials. And these then he puts into red felt folders very carefully. Then you go back further. September 2, 2025. That's about 6 weeks backwards from today. He had his fourth dinner with PRC officials, and this dinner with Chinese officials is at a restaurant in Fairfax, Virginia, and this dinner lasts several hours, and the allegation is, because it doesn't say what's inside the bag, that Chinese officials present him with a red gift bag before departing. Before that, there is the third dinner with PRC officials. That takes us back to March 19, 2024, where again Tellis dines with PRC officials at a Fairfax restaurant not far from his home, because he lives in an area called Vienna in Virginia. Again, this meeting with PRC officials, or alleged meeting, is at a Fairfax restaurant where they pick up, they are eavesdropping on the conversations, and they say they are talking about US-Pakistan relations after their meal. What is this telling us? This is telling us that the FBI was not only tracking him, but they knew beforehand where he was going to meet the Chinese, which means they must have been tracking his phone, and they had their people positioned already close to the table where the Chinese and Ashley Tellis were allegedly going to be sitting. And then we go backwards and we are getting into very interesting period of time. In fact, even March 19, 2024, the third dinner with the PRC officials was in an interesting time. But as we go backwards, it will get more significant, and I will tell you why. April 11, 2023 is his second dinner, please add in alleged everywhere, with PRC officials, and there the FBI spooks sitting on a table close by, they overhear that they are discussing Iran-China relations, emerging technologies, and artificial intelligence. All this while, Ashley's day job is to be a top expert and analyst and having a professorial position at Carnegie. And this is the time he's also writing his long articles and his long analysis. He's also a very familiar talking head on Indian TV channels. He's been interviewed routinely on all of India's TV channels and by all of India's interviewers, and also on the print, which takes us to his first dinner with PRC officials, which is September 15, 2022. Again, it's at a restaurant in Fairfax. Again, the Chinese bring a gift bag. Again, Tellis goes in with a manila envelope. When he comes out, he doesn't have the manila envelope with him, but he has the gift bag him. Now, what's the reason I said that as we get into March 2024, it acquires a different significance? Because then it is the Joe Biden administration that's in power. In fact, he's under FBI watch since September 15, 2022, which means watch was put on him during the Biden era. And there is another interesting fact from that period that we must mention. And that's doubly the reason this timing is so important. Because then Christopher Wray was the head of FBI. His predecessor, James Comey, is now being prosecuted by Trump administration by the same office, the same prosecutor's office, which is prosecuting Ashley Tellis. But more importantly, at this point, the head of CIA was William Burns. Until he became the head of CIA, William Burns was the president of Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. So to that extent, he was Ashley Tellis's boss there. This surveillance started deep in the Biden era. In fact, I would say on the peak of the Biden era. All of this sorted, I'm now inviting Praveen Swami to make sense of what has happened. So Praveen, you've read this 10-page document. It has some interesting aspects. For example, it doesn't accuse Tellis of any espionage, only unauthorized possession. And then it says some other interesting things like it even uses the word hearsay someplace. So just explain to us what exactly do you make of it.
So
just squeeze it and give us the juice.
So you're absolutely right, Shekhar. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here that we'll only figure out as this case goes on. But a couple of things jump out. The first is that this isn't by any means the first or only case where high US officials, as you mentioned in your introduction, have been charged with taking sensitive documents home. Among the things I was looking at was 2008, the then Attorney General carries back documents about a national security agency wiretap episode. Alberto Gonzalez, the director of the CIA, John Deutsch, in 1995 carries home documents. And the most famous case, which you will remember, is a lady called Robin Rayful, who was a State Department diplomat.
Who doesn't know Robin Rayful in India? She's the one who raised questions on the instrument of accession, right? And lit a fire that still smolders.
Well, Robin Rayful was accused initially of espionage for Pakistan or not declaring an intelligence relationship
with Pakistan.
Later, they couldn't quite pin that out as a case. They tried getting her on taking, again, classified documents home and couldn't make it stick.
And he's mentioned Robin Rayful. I will just give you a little context. Robin Rayful's former husband was US ambassador to Pakistan, and he was on the plane with Ziaul Haq, the C-130. In fact, he was to be on the other plane, which was a smaller plane, and he thought the C-130 will be more comfortable. So he hopped onto the C-130 and died in that crash with Ziaul Haq as well. That said, you go forward.
What a tragic thing that was. But Robin Raphael made India's diplomatic life hell for a long
because
time
she
afterwards.
kept a Pakistan connection. But nothing came of that case.
Nothing came of that case. In the other two cases, the Deutsch case and the Alberto Gonzalez case.
If I may go back to Robin Raphael, in her case, charges were withdrawn.
Charges were withdrawn. What American prosecutors typically like to do in all these cases is, rather than take them to trial, they like a plea bargain.
Right.
So you say, okay, I won't plead guilty to espionage, but you can get me for something else which is much lower. And most of these cases have been settled that way. Now, in this case, based on what we know, there's an innocent explanation and a not so innocent explanation. The innocent explanation is that Dr. Tellis is a highly literate thinking man who writes many books on many things. And maybe he decides that rather than noting everything down and remembering everything, printing out his notes and carrying them home is not that big a crime. It may be a misdemeanor, but it's not such a terrible thing to do. And there's nothing we see.
That's the innocent explanation. What is the diabolical explanation?
The diabolical explanation is that he is actually conducting espionage, meeting very openly with the Chinese and with others, because after all, who would suspect that he's spying in that case? And that either counterintelligence officers in the in the CIA or in the FBI know something that they can't come out with or may not want to come out with, and are trying to get him for the leakage of documents, which can have serious consequences. Now, a lot of these cases you only learn the truth about 30 years later and everything is declassified.
Or when memoirs are written.
But it's possible here. There's a third possibility also, which we should not forget, that they may have got or misinterpreted or misunderstood some information. There've been cases of that happening. David Petraeus, who was CIA chief, was accused of mishandling some of his official papers. He never got into trouble for that.
Using Gmail.
So he never got into trouble for that. But while they were digging around, they discovered an inappropriate relationship with a lady who was his biographer. All kinds of things sometimes crop up in these situations. Anything involving the level of access Ashley Tellis had, which was to absolutely the highest levels of secrecy in the US government, I would imagine that whoever is managing these things would like to be doubly and triply sure that nothing wrong has gone on.
And right now, in this document, the word hearsay is used. If you would
fascinating
take me through that line.
The agent in charge, it's an unusual line. I'm not a legal expert, but in many of the cases I have not seen this sentence. The officer concerned says that, look, I can't. What I'm writing down in this 10 pages is both things I know personally to be a fact, which is what officers usually say, but also hearsay. Somebody has told me this, right? It may be somebody who is very credible. It may be somebody who is not credible.
He's not saying that. He's just saying hearsay.
He's just saying hearsay. So he's saying some of this I know personally to be true. Some of this somebody has told me. Now who that somebody is, we are not any the wiser.
But he's used the expression hearsay.
And hearsay evidence, of course, is not usually admissible in a criminal trial. So it would be interesting to know what he means by this. You have a lot of things in the subsequent case as well. The Manila envelope.
Right.
Now, the Manila envelope could be something very serious, and it could be something absolutely nothing. Maybe Ashley Tellis is giving a copy of some article he's written to the Chinese diplomat. Maybe he's giving top secret plans for something. Typically in these cases, as they go towards trial, when the FBI realizes it's not getting a plea deal or it wants to put pressure for a plea deal, you'll get a drip of more evidence coming out.
Then they can take it up to espionage If they have more
They will
evidence.
add charges, they will, bring out more. Also, countries tend to be a little reluctant, as that lovely book you have over there, Spycatcher on your lap, fantastic book.
Right.
But countries always tend to be a little reluctant in espionage trials about wanting to say too much in a courtroom, because you may end up exposing national secrets in a courtroom, which will then be picked apart by a lawyer, by the defense lawyer in an open court. It can be very, very awkward. The thing that also is, missing here right now is assuming the nefarious, option too. The US has had, give or take, some 20 major espionage cases in the post-Second World War period.
Will you mention some of those?
Very famously, the Aldrich Ames case. They had a few Cuban cases.
What happened in the Aldrich Ames
The
case?
Aldrich Ames case. Now, this was an interesting thing. He was a absolutely ruthless individual who had no ideological leanings or dislike for his country or like for some other country. He ended up in a difficult financial situation. Had an ex-wife, demanding payments that he couldn't make. And basically, he sold the secrets of the CIA for
whom?
money to the KGB.
I see.
And ended up, I think, if I remember correctly, being sentenced to many decades in prison. Again, it was one of those cases where much of what he sold could never be disclosed in court because it was so sensitive. On the other hand, you had other cases like a Cuban lady of Cuban heritage who spied against her adopted country, America, because of a feeling of Cuban nationalism and being connected to Cuba.
So she spied for the Cubans.
She spied for the Cubans. The most famous example of this, which I know you love this story as well. I think all spy-interested people love it. Kim Philby, the Cambridge Five. They spied during the Second World War because they wanted to defeat Adolf Hitler. They spied before the Second World War because they were very upset that Britain was not doing enough to support Adolf Hitler. And in the period after the Second World War, when Britain and the United States were trying to penetrate the Iron Curtain, they could never understand why all their secret operations all failed. They would send these spies who were often Central Asian Muslims to parachute into the Soviet Union.
And they will get caught.
Well, they would just disappear. It was because the man who was number 2 eventually in MI6 and would well have gone on to be number 1 was a committed communist and a spy. Though there's a take on this by Kim Philby. There's a take on Kim Philby by one of his biographers, which is interesting.
Wasn't Philby India born?
Yes, absolutely. A colonial service officer goes to the United Kingdom to study as an older boy, like many people do, discovers a resentment for public schools in the British class system, is bisexual and also alienated from his social milieu as a consequence. But one of the fascinating things about him is he insists he's a communist, and he says he did everything he did for that Order of Lenin he got.
For ideology.
However, his biographer says that he really did it because he wanted to show everyone he was smarter than them. And the real payoff was making a fool of everyone. Now, it's an interesting psychological observation.
Who were the Cambridge Five? I know you have them on the palm of your hand.
Kim Philby, MacLean, Burgess, Blunt, and Cairncross. MacLean, interesting guy. He's an alcoholic, completely useless, but the group sticks with him. You have other spies. You have the very famous case of a Soviet spy in Tokyo who pretends to be a journalist, becomes very friendly with the German consul in Tokyo, and keeps sending Stalin these messages saying, hey, the Germans are going to attack you. They're going to attack you. And Stalin has a wonderful pact with Hitler at that point and refuses to believe his spies. And he sends him the time and date of Operation Barbarossa, which is thrown in the dustbin as rubbish.
Intelligence life is like that. There are also rivalries between agencies. For example, this book talks about a lot of that. In fact, in this case, Philby 5 are under suspicion and they are being interrogated by MI6 and MI5. There's an episode, MI5 has bugged the interrogation room and they know that interrogation is being fixed, but they can't complain because that bugging is unauthorized.
And I think one of the things, Shekhar, in all these stories is, we sometimes forget that we all bring our biases to the table. And MI6 was this Oxbridge public school, very genteel, very cultured bunch of people, fantastic at their jobs. They spoke beautiful Arabic, they knew regions, they knew languages, but there was this bunch of upper crust guys who could never believe one of their own would betray their country. Now, Peter Wright, who wrote that book, was a constable who'd worked his way up from the bottom, didn't like these guys.
And in that era, he was an electronics guy. And when he wrote this book, this was banned. This couldn't be published in Britain. So ultimately, the Australians published it.
Fascinating stories. Here again, to come back to the case, like I said, maybe completely innocent. I'm borrowing a book from your office and taking it home with every intention of bringing it back tomorrow. Maybe actually it's a rare book I'm selling to the guy, some guy I've and often it's very difficult to know the truth about all these things. You covered the Samba spy case. How difficult it was to figure out what the real truth was and how long it was before it came out finally.
Yeah. I did directly cover the Samba spy case, but I know what went wrong there and how people were ultimately proven innocent. But I did cover the ISRO spy case,
where again an innocent man was...
two innocent scientists. So at one point, the hawa was such that everybody thought they were guilty. So even when I did that story in India Today, saying that this case did not make sense, it got quite a blowback. In fact, if it was in this era, this would have set Twitter on fire. So thank God, in 1993-94, that calamity did not take place.
No, but it got attention, and I think the important thing that certainly you should be able to take some satisfaction from is that an innocent man or two innocent people who went through very difficult times could know that somebody was willing to hear them out.
Yeah.
And I think now in this matter also we should reserve our judgment.
Because in this case also, you see language of suspicion being used by the FBI. In one place, there is a reference to suspicious travel, that they moved on him before October 11, because October 11, he was scheduled to fly to Italy, from where he was supposed to come back to 27th. And this FBI document says that they suspect that he was trying to go away with the secret documents.
Is it possible? Most certainly it is possible.
It is possible, yes.
And it is possible he was going to make a run. Flip side of the story, it's well known that Dr. Tellis had purchased a retirement home in Italy and had
By
let
the
it be
lakeside.
by the lakes, and had let it be known that he wanted to retire peacefully. He's a devout Christian and found, I think, the milieu in Italy.
Devout Christian, Mumbai born, 63 years old, 64 now, and a PhD from Chicago.
So how do you finally get to the thing? I think one of the lessons, to me at least, is you listen to all the stories, you reserve your judgments, and see the way this plays out, especially in these kinds of stories.
That's very well put. And I see now some stories coming up in American media as well. Not that much, because he wasn't that prominent in the American media. In India, not only was he read, he was interviewed often. He was one of the most familiar American talking heads, or American talking heads of Indian origin in all of the Indian media. He also came into India for almost 3 years as special assistant or special advisor to Robert Blackwill, who was a Harvard professor. He came in as US ambassador to India on September 14, 2001, 4 days after 9/11, and just 3 months before the attack on Parliament. And then he and Ashley Tellis handled that op parakram situations. So Praveen, as you are saying, this will now be a long process in the American legal system.
It may be a long process. On the other hand, for all we know the Robin Rafel case went on for a very long time because she contested it and fought it and so on. It may be that for various reasons, Dr. Tellis accepts a plea deal of some minor misconduct. Lawyers in America are tremendously expensive, and not everybody is Robin Rafel-esque in their desire to fight a long, expensive trial. But definitely this will happen transparently, and we will, of course, at ThePrint be watching it as it goes on.
I can only conclude this with something that that Ashley Tellis' boss in India used to say, Robert Blackman. His favorite line was, "Hang on to your tough times because tomorrow they'll be your good old days."